Hello,
Yeah.
hello, hello.
Hi. Love a lovely chorus of hellos. Love to hear it. So rather than me just kind of, I've already done enough monologue. You're probably tired of my voice at this point. Rather than just do a little bio of everyone, I'm going to ask each one of the four speakers to do a, almost like a elevator pitch, 30 seconds, just about who they are and their expertise. So if we could start off with Varun from Netflix.
Sure. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Varun Sawhney. I lead the learning and development team for customer service at Netflix, and I'm based out of Amsterdam. I think last year we've unleashed the power, the potential of digital learning, and I'm sure you'll all agree it's been more important now than ever before. So I'm excited to hear more perspectives on this topic and participate in this discussion today. So yeah, thank you for having me.
No worries. Thank you very much for joining us. And next up, we have Liz from Transforming Talent.
So, hey there. Hi, everyone. This is Liz Lembke from Transforming Talent. I'm old school. I still wave at folks. I'm excited to be here today. I'm based out of Støckert, Germany, originally from Oregon, so therefore the odd German accent. I am involved in the topic of talent at work. So basically anything and everything having to do with talent at work. I lead up the stream for L&D Cares around career growth. I'm really trying to marry the recruiting L&D as well as where is learning going and creating career paths. I also have a newsletter and an article, and I'm so excited to be talking about this topic today.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Liz. And next up, we have Diana from UCL Knowledge Lab.
Hello, and thank you very much for the invitation. I've been working in the area of digital technologies for decades now, and really across both teaching and research in all sectors, in all subject areas, and quite a range of technologies. But in the most recent decade, my focus has really shifted to teachers and how we support teachers with understanding and making the best possible use of digital technologies. And that's, I think, what my focus is going to be here today as we discuss this very wide range of topics that we've got ahead of us. So thank you.
I can't wait to hear more. And last but not least, we have Robin. Can we have your 30-second elevator pitch, please?
Hello, I'm Robin Støckert, and I must say that I've attended all the IEC conferences, and it's been a pleasure, but it's strange to be online for once. I'm working as a leader for a teaching excellent program at the University in Trondheim, together with the University in Oslo, and doing research and development on cross-campus, cross-university teaching and learning.
Amazing. Thank you very much. So let's just dive straight in, and going to direct the first question to Varun. And it's like it's a real doozy. Is that what do you think, in your perspective, have been some of the most engaging, interesting, and effective uses of digital learning that you've seen, in 2020, which was probably one of the craziest years any of us have lived through?
Yeah, great question. Like I said, this year we saw more facets, more attributes to digital learning than ever before. I think every crisis brings in some new opportunities, right? And that's what I would say was the silver lining to this pandemic. We've talked about the power of digital learning, but this year more than ever, we saw more of it. So I think when it came to using new tools, new technologies, consistent platforms, new authoring tools, having days to do a lot more prep, a lot more check-in, a moment to convert a lot of instructor-led training to self-led training, having a lot more like instructor-led sessions that were really meaningful in nature, right? So I think in general, technology got us to a way to harness the potential of learning more than ever. I think we've seen the power of newer tools ever than before. more troubleshooting, more technology harness. So in general, I think this pandemic gave rise to a lot more access to tools and technology in the world of digital learning than ever before.
No, that's that's very interesting. Just how, I guess it gave you could argue that it's just jumped forward the industry in like so many years because it was just forced on people and they had to make those changes. Awesome. So next question is going to Robin, and I kind of wanted to talk. I know that you've worked closely with education facilities, and it's something you still do now. And just wanted what your thoughts on how successful the rollout of digital learning technology has been. Is it more problematic than you anticipated? Less so? Where do you sit on that?
Oh, don't get me started. There's well, on many levels, because I mean, universities are like super tankers. It's really hard to change the direction, and you have to plan a lot ahead. I mean, everything is interconnected, and you have some kind of mutual dependencies on all our systems. So it's not just to change the course. And often when we do one change, we have to think about a lot of systems that has to follow this. I mean, administrative, it's reallocation of rooms, especially during COVID then. Reallocation of rooms, of schedules, allocation of resources and people. The technical part, you have to do something about the infrastructure to support more streaming and recordings. You have to increase the security, you have to increase the bandwidth of the wireless network. And also, we plan to refurbish our classrooms, but the challenge was that we have to change all this into making it into, let's say, to do recordings in the classrooms. And we had to make it scalable, so suddenly we have to introduce uniform communication and collaboration, like Zoom, Teams, Skype, etc., Pixip. But the challenge is that these are not adapted to a classroom size. You can use them in a small room, but as long as you have to put it in a larger classroom with microphones, cameras that has to be connected to a PC and then go out to your already existing system. And it has to be, you have to use an extender that costs more than the camera you want to use on USB 3. I mean, a lot of these technical things. And also to make it professor safe. That means you only need one button to control it. That's really hard. And suddenly you have three interfaces, one from the old control interface, one from the new Zoom or Skype interface, and then you have a new document camera. And at the end of the day, you have to train people to use it and see the benefits of this. And then you have to deliver equipment also to teachers teaching from home for the first time and how to educate them. So, I mean, the list is everlasting. Yeah. But I'm really proud of the universities trying to make this happen on the fly. It's a tremendous effort.
Yeah. So what you're saying is it was very easy and there's no problems whatsoever. Real easy, swift process. Yeah.
In a nutshell, yes.
No, that's that sound. I liked your way of talking about a university as kind of like a massive tanker that just takes an incredible amount of time to shift. No, thank you very much for that, Robin. Next up, this question is for Liz. So I think one of the things that's happened this year, kind of building on what Robin is saying, is you have these big organizations that are now having to, adapt to digital learning. And I just wondered, from your experience, what are the kind of the barriers on both a technological and human scale of, implementing digital learning policies?
Really good question. I think one of the things that when it comes to implementing any sort of new training, learning, etc., there has to be a real impetus as to why are we doing this and what are we hoping to get out of it. And we had at the beginning of the year a really clear impetus of we're going to have the majority of our workforce, people who weren't allowed to work from home in November, all of a sudden come February, March, okay, everybody needs to work from home. So there was a very clear direct impetus as to why do we need to do this? How do we get things set up? And what is going to be our new role for interaction? And there was a lot of support. So here, that's really one of those key pieces as we look to what creates a good space for implementing learning is if the context and the drivers behind it as to What are we doing? What are we hoping to get out of it? And how will we know that we've been successful? Taking a lot of what Robin just said and really making it clear as to everybody as to why are we doing this. When it comes to then also in general looking at digital learning, the same applies. It's not as easy to argue as we're in a pandemic, everybody's working from home. But at the same time, as we're looking to upskilling the future of work, changing how are we collaborating and going beyond just kind of coordinating work packages, that's when it really gets interesting around digital learning as to how do we create really good collaboration spaces where it's not just kind of, here's a job aid, learn it, and then you will be successful. So getting that clarity as to why are we doing something, what are we hoping to get out of it, particularly as there's a lot of ambiguity going on, that's the challenge. And those are some of the barriers that we have to look to, which are oftentimes more around what's my own motivation, what is my role in this, rather than what we oftentimes look at, which are the technology barriers or the bandwidth issues.
Yeah, so it's kind of, I guess, almost in a way of starting with like, a real clarity and understanding of what you want to achieve at the end. And I guess that was actually probably a big issue for lots of companies kind of, or organizations just thrown into this digital learning. So thank you very much. So Diana, we've kind of now spoken a little bit about some of the issues and barriers that people bumped into in 2020. Now kind of want to shift it a little bit more into looking into the future. And specifically, what sort of technologies do you expect to make a big impact in 2021? Especially, we may be, maybe now people are far more used to like Zoom and Google Hangouts. What's kind of the next step, or are we going to still keep on using these same bits of technology?
Well, I'm afraid I know from experience that this is an impossible question to answer. So thank you for that. Because for many years, there was an American company that used to survey academics on a regular basis saying, what do you expect the most important educational technologies will be over the next year, 3 years, 5 years? And I used to track that year after year, and we always got it hopelessly wrong. What was in there, in fact, was not good quality predictions, but a lot of wishful thinking about what ought to happen. So I suspect that's what you're going to get from me. It's going to be my wish of what will happen, because for me, what's been most extraordinary about the last year is the way in which teachers have just done it. They've just got on and done it. So many of them have really stepped up, and with extraordinarily little support. We have not rolled out the support packages and the courses and the support that people need to be able to make this really 180-degree shift from conventional to wholly online in the most difficult situation. So I think that's been extraordinary. And what we should learn from that is to trust the teachers to innovate, not try to do it for them and not try to tell them what to do. This is not going to come from the tech companies. It's not going to come from educational leadership, which has not stepped up to helping teachers at all, nor even students. At least in the UK, there was a promise that every child would get a laptop who needed it. That was some million or more children. Well, they don't have them. And they've had, it's nearly 10 months now that situation's been in place. So it's the teachers whom we have to trust. And that means that my prediction for the biggest impact in 2021 is going to be the use of large-scale online platforms for professional development, MOOCs, essentially. And on FutureLearn, we have quick plug course started yesterday called Blended and Online Learning Design for teachers in all sectors. And I just hope that kind of thing, not just in education actually, but when you think about things like the climate crisis, where people will calmly say we have to educate everybody on the planet about this, it's those kinds of technologies that enable to reach very large numbers everywhere to really make the change. And this last year has shown us that could happen. So that's my prediction.
No, I liked it. I think that was a nice balance between being, kind of wishful thinking and actually something that could happen. And I really hope, some of those thoughts come through, especially when it comes to climate change. Yes, but thank you very much, Diana. So those are kind of like some broad questions, but now what we kind of wanted to do was nail down a little bit tighter to some of the expertise of our speakers. So circling back to Varun, obviously you work at Netflix, which as far as global organizations go, you can't really get, you know, much more global than that. So kind of wanted to put to you, you know, the question of how you achieve uniformity even in learning experiences within different regions and cultures, and, you know, all across the world, there's a completely different approach. Like, how do you go from the ground up in making sure that all these different, you know, preferences to learning are represented in a way where the outcome is unified?
The golden words, you're still on mute, sorry. Okay, yeah, great question. And I think it's very relevant to what you said at what we do at Netflix. And maybe I can share some context for how we do this at Netflix, because we are a global company. So the CS business at Netflix is supported across different regions, North America, Latin America, EMEA, APAC, by a network of about 6,000 customer service professionals, which are part of an outsourced partner network of about 26 vendors, and we take contacts in about 24 languages. And our approach to learning and development is global, and I like this word. It's been used a lot these days. So we come with a global training content creation with a local rollout and mindset. So the Netflix product is primarily the same across the world. So at Netflix, we have a global team that's responsible for all content creation to ensure that our training programs are consistent and complete in all respects. And at the same time, in addition to this global team, we have regional teams that are responsible for adding any regionally relevant content or adjusting the global content with a regional flavor. And you would imagine one size does not fit all, right? So what we consider very important is really giving the regional preferences their due. Not generalizing, but as an example, a region like EMEA, I think, can personally work well with a lot more self-study, a lot more e-learning, a lot more preparation before the start of a course. LATAM, I think, likes a lot more debriefing, checking in, context setting moments. And APAC, I think, is a good mix of both, with maybe a slightly higher affinity towards more discussion and check-in moments. So again, really giving the regional flavor its due importance when we create these courses, empowering our regional teams to do what they think is best with global training, and customize it in a way that really, you know, aligns with the preferences of the region. But holistically, just to round up this discussion, I personally think that a blended learning approach, you know, which encapsulates different learning styles, different learning preferences, is a safer bet. So when you have a rich mix of learning experiences, including self-study, practice, discussion, mentoring, coaching, I think then there's something that aligns and, you know, with everybody who's a learner. In addition, I think a last point worth mentioning is, in order to achieve this uniformity, irrespective of region or culture, what is more important is to also invest in great tooling that give you consistent experiences. So, you know, reporting, dashboarding, authoring tool, platforms, I think if they are consistent throughout, you get a stronger global flavor, and the regional content just adds that extra icing on the top, which is a lot more regionally favorable.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Effectively, kind of a combo of you know, think global, act local, ensuring people have a mixture of different learning methods so that they can be, you know, personally responsible for what works best for them, and then finally, like, the correct sort of tools that will help them and help you unify everything. No, that's interesting. It must be such a big challenge doing all that work for a company like Netflix. So on to Liz. So I know one of the things that we spoke about were kind of some of the barriers about implementing digital learning. And you know, we were talking about you know, some of the issues of just, you know, a lot about like how the clarity for companies was hard, and they were just kind of, a lot of people just dumped into digital learning at the end of last year. So how would you go about trying to help people who are maybe not tech adverse, weren't really planning on using these bits of software, and, you know, for as an example, now are fine with Zoom but don't want to touch anything else? What's the, you know, how do you go about that?
Sneak it in. So to be honest, really like making it fun and making it not about the tool. I think one of the biggest challenges that I've seen is that there's so much technical training and focus around the tool that also creates a barrier in terms of the fear factor of, oh goodness, am I going to break something? Rather than saying, you know, value creation is really about the users. Why would they be excited? What would they want to use your tool for? So I'll just take my dad as an example. My dad plays in jazz bands. My dad wants to play music. So he's going to figure out how to use Zoom, how to get his buddies onto Zoom so they can jam together. So here, this aspect of, you know, as we look to how do we get people using different tools, is looking at what can they use it for. So not creating job aids and explaining everything down to the minute detail, but using that aspect of self-actualization where people say, okay, I'm a curious learner. I want to have that success of figuring something out. So as an example, I do L&D cares and I run these career growth summit. And so I want to introduce L&D professionals to different platforms so that they can use beyond Zoom. They can use Hopin, for example, or in this summer I used Remo. I'm going to be using AirMeet. So one of my goals is to explain to the people attending just that far. So I'm going to say, okay, there's a whiteboard and mural, you can find it here. How they use it, how they leverage it, that's open to their curiosity and their exploration. And so giving people that opportunity to say, this will facilitate whatever you're trying to accomplish, what you need to do, or what we're hoping you guys do together as a team. Technology will enable it, but tapping into that fun piece of curiosity, that's where I think digital learning needs to go into. Is it's not about the tool. The tool enables it, but if you get into the curiosity, if you get into, you know, what can people experience, how does it work for them, and then that really gets rid of a lot of that fear factor, and then they're going to figure it out, because there's nothing like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all like a scavenger hunt or geocaching, and you want to figure it out. And so play into that, and that will be really helpful in terms of successful implementation of new technology.
No, that's really interesting. Kind of an expanded and tweaked version of that whole give a man a fish, teach a man to fish sort of thing, right? Where if you give someone the ability and like the spark to actually do something, it's much more successful than saying, this is how you do it. You know, you just enable them. No, fascinating. Thank you. So Diana, kind of going back to your point, I know you mentioned teachers on there, and just to play kind of devil's advocate a little bit, you were mentioning that, you know, teachers were given no support about kind of their, you know, how to use these modern tools and how to get online. But for them, isn't there a lot of material out there? Shouldn't we effectively expect teachers to be able to learn without help? Isn't that like, shouldn't that just be part of their profession?
Yes, I absolutely agree. It should be. And I think one of the things that teachers have demonstrated is that is exactly what they do. They figure it out somehow or other, and they do help themselves, and each other to some degree. But the approach that it seems the people who are trying to help teachers have taken is to curate masses and masses of resources for them. So there are lots of sites with digital resources which are designed to help with education. But this is an approach to education which is anathema to all the ways in which we talk about education these days. We talk about active learning, we talk about social learning, collaborative learning, and so on. This is didactic, if nothing. I mean, it's less than didactic actually. It's the modern equivalent of saying to anybody who wants to learn something, there's the library, there's masses of stuff there, go and find it. And that's what those sites are for teachers. You know, you're desperate. Well, how am I going to deal with my class tomorrow? on online learning. What am I going to do with them? And you go to one of those sites and you say, well, I've got to teach maths and something to do with calculus or something. So you type in maths and calculus and there's 100 things. What on earth are you meant to do with that? You know, that is not support. It's not helping people learn. It's not education. So what it would be a much better way around, I think, is to acknowledge that teachers are innovating, but they can't do it on their own. So the point of resorting to something like a large-scale online course for teachers is to run that as a kind of massive collaboration between teachers, where you do curate these things for them and you say, here's a good tool, you can use it for this. Here's some good kinds of ways of using certain resources in this context. But look at the pedagogy, look at the sequence of activities that teacher is using to be able to make that resource work. And then get them sharing ideas and sharing their learning designs. And that's pretty much the way in which we've constructed these kinds of courses, to bring teachers together to learn from each other, a little like what we do in research. You know, we don't sort of dive into research not looking at anything. What we all do is find out what other people have done that we can pilfer and borrow and learn from, and then adapt to what we need to do, and then find out something and share it back. Now, that sort of knowledge development process is what I think we really need to be doing for teachers, and we're trying to do it, but you know, we should have been trying nearly a year ago.
No, I agree completely. I've got a lot of friends who are teachers, and you know, nothing but respect for that profession. But I guess what you're saying is, you know, they need to be treated as intelligent individuals.
Yes. Yeah, harness the teachers. You know, not just the technology, also harness the teachers because they're very powerful, very knowledgeable. They're with those children every day. They're learning from them. They're learning what works and what doesn't work. Well, get them, you know, enable them to share that knowledge and build it. And that's what we really need to do, because we've got a lot to learn.
Yes.
Have we lost you, Callum?
Oh, sorry about that. We had some technical issues. My name is Mar, and I'm also an editor at TNW. So we'll just make a smooth transition. I actually have some audience questions that we've been rolling in the chat. And I'd like to start with Robin. There's a question from Patty Baker.
We haven't come to Robin yet. We haven't had Robin's particular question yet. But Callum was going to ask him.
Okay. Well, we'll move on to the audience bit just for now, as we're experiencing some technical difficulties. So, Robin, you mentioned that Zoom, Teams, and etc. aren't really optimized for large rooms. What do you think will be the solution to this in the long term? A different platform, perhaps?
I think that what we have to find is a common ground for standards. I mean, we have a lot of standards today. We have NDI for video, we have Dante for audio, we have SVDOE for synchronized video and audio, and we have ST 2021, a lot of standards for AV over IP. And if these systems could talk more to each other and then be integrated into, let's say, a Zoom PC or a Teams PC, it would be much better. So I think this is the first step to create some kind of common language, connecting these devices together on a more easier way. So you don't have to buy 15 gadgets just to connect the camera to a PC to a local system, etc. So
yeah, and I guess also
what over IP is the answer here, I think.
Yeah, and I guess also what universities are looking for is an investment they can actually trust will last them a few years. So there has to be some sort of conversation between all of these solutions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Robin. Now for you, Elizabeth. So as we start to free up and are actually allowed to meet up again in person with vaccines on the way, do you think that people that are upskilling at their companies, do you think they will want to keep online learning, or do they want to prefer to shift back into in-person learning? Because I know a lot of students in schools might prefer going in person, but what is it going to be for companies?
I think honestly, it's going to be a hybrid. I think we've experienced how different aspects of learning are social, and we miss that. At the same time, we're also noticing that people who otherwise couldn't take part in conferences or couldn't take part in these discussions all of a sudden have a lot of access. So I was leading a conference for sourcers, and when we got all this feedback from Africa as well as Bucharest of we could never have gotten these speakers, we could have never gotten to attend this because the costs were way too prohibitive. So I think we're going to have hybrid solutions in terms of where does the social collaboration, where does that help? Looking at here, what are some aspects around instructional design where it's not only that face forward kind of instruction. I totally agree with what Diana was saying. We need to go back to pedagogy and away from panicology and say, okay, how do we actually get to those aspects of learning and really thinking beyond kind of instructor-led face frontal and really thinking about how are we building competence, integrating it into work and what we're doing. And then also saying, okay, how do we get back to the universities, not just the classes that you're attending, it's part of becoming an adult and part of that social interaction, and what happens beyond the coursework is as important for that adulting experience as perhaps the curricula that is taught in a particular class. So I think we're going to see a mix.
Yeah, I think everybody's looking forward to the hybrid mix, but maybe people will become a bit more demanding about what actually is supposed to be in person. I can imagine the question, did this need to be in person, will be thrown out a lot. Well, I'm going to back to Robin, because we have the question that Callum was just about to ask before his connection cut out. So Robin, about the SALTO research project. So what's the concept behind that? And what are the lessons you learned about cross-campus digital learning in that?
Well, the concept is quite easy. It's based on three things: the pedagogy, the space, and the technology. And then they're in like this triangle. And how can you make this optimized in a cross-campus or cross-university settings? Our idea was to connect the University in Oslo with the University in Trondheim in a joint master called Music, Communication and Technology. So the idea was to create an extended learning space, a physical space that could extend 500 kilometers from Oslo to Trondheim. So what we did there, we introduced a real advanced technology connecting one room in Oslo with one room in Trondheim. So it means that we could talk in real time. That was good. So it was like a seamless, always on real-time connection where students and teachers can work together from both locations. That was the concept. But what happened is that, well, the students were also given the responsibility to maintain this portal and to make it work. But the challenge was that even if you use high-tech technologies, we lost some of the communication, the co-presence feeling. And suddenly the students said that, well, high technology is okay for certain things, but for others, the students found their own ways of communicating. They found their own tools, like Discord or whatever, to solve the tasks, because they were always working in teams across distance. So what we found out is technology doesn't solve everything. It helps the presence, but it's not enough. So I think it's up to the students themselves and the teachers to work together to find what is good enough, and how it's not just about technology, but also to get the flow. Get the engagement and everything working. Some days the technology stops. Some days you're as a teacher or as a student, you don't feel like this is working. So to make all this play together is an important factor. So at the same day the COVID hit, we had to find another way of doing this, to deliver the same quality of learning experience to all the students independent of physical and virtual location. So at the end of the day, I hope this will make the students and teachers more resilient and handle or give them the ability to change, but also give them a more flexible way of handling collaboration, communication, and technology, and working together.
It sounds truly interesting, Robin. Thank you for that. Diana, on this point a bit. So Robin mentioned the collaboration in that project between teachers and students, and you talked earlier about the guidance that teachers needed. It is, of course, challenging because then teachers kind of have to collaborate with the students as well. So now it becomes quite a long chain. So do you think the teachers should be a leading role in connecting the solutions and the students?
I think it's crucial for teachers to be leading this because they're the ones who will be thinking most productively about it. But collaboration is extremely difficult to do. I mean, I've worked on a number of collaborative research projects, for example. If you're trying to do a multidisciplinary research project, it can take academics from 2 different disciplines a year or more to learn how to collaborate. I mean, it's quite intelligent people. And we really want to do it. And, we've got the money to do it and we're supposed to be doing it. But it can take so long because you have to understand each other and you have to understand your joint interests and where they differ and so on. And that goes all the way to that group of students that you throw together to say, okay, now go off and do that collaborative project. Or equally, as you were just suggesting, to a group of teachers and students who've now got to come up with something together somehow. So you do need to approach that process with a certain degree of scaffolding of what it means to do it. So you do it in small steps maybe, or you try and do something together, or you at least try to work out what your common purpose is. Somebody has to orchestrate that process, in other words. And the people most likely to understand the best way of doing that are probably the teachers. So I think having the teachers leading it makes sense. But don't let anybody think you can just do it. It doesn't just happen. It has to be carefully thought through and planned and orchestrated.
That's truly true. We have time for one last quick question for you, Varun. We have here from the audience from Steven Sarempa. You spoke about how Netflix works with external companies, but I assume also with their own employees. Are they treated differently in training and development or similar also in terms of access to training and platforms, etc.? And has that changed now?
I think there's been a lot more emphasis on internal learning as well. So, it's also the first time at Netflix we look for an organization-wide platform for learning purposes. We never thought we would do that, but now, we're more local, we're becoming a bigger company, we're thinking of learning in different ways. So yeah, I think also for internal employees, this has become a bigger topic of discussion. Also into Netflix style, we're not looking for a very traditional way of personal development or employee growth within the company. So we're still evolving, we're still discussing what's the best way around it. Is it more formal courses? Is it more peer-to-peer learning? Is it more mentoring at work? So what does that look like? But I think what's definitely clear that there is technology to look out for and take help from in doing this exercise well. And yeah, it's a path we have to go across right now just to figure out what's the best way as we become this big company of 8,000 plus employees now.
Yeah, that sounds like a big university, to be honest. Yeah, thank you so much. I think we could keep on talking all day about this topic, but that's unfortunately all the time we have for audience questions for the moment. I want to thank you, Varun, Diana, Elizabeth, and Robin so much for sharing your thoughts here today. And I apologize to everyone about Callum dropping out, but hopefully we managed to run smoothly. And now we'll move on to the On the Sofa section with Mike Tolfsen in just a moment. Stay tuned.